Hello, and welcome to Lacunae, a YouTube channel covering overlooked topics in history. In this video, we'll be covering the Carthaginian Republic. Carthage was founded as a monarchy. This changed around 480 BC, when the ruling government was deposed and replaced with a republic. The Carthaginian Republic was held together by a system of checks and balances between the lower courts, the higher courts, and the chief executive. But before we dive into the composition of these administrative divisions, we must start with a brief assessment of its core political body. We must start with a discussion of the Carthaginian citizenry. The citizenry were the backbone of the Carthaginian Republic. However, limited information is known about them. In particular, it is not known how citizenship rights were conferred. Socially, Carthaginians belonged to associations called Mizrahim. These associations were communal in nature, and do not appear to have designated membership in electoral districts or economic classes. The Mizrahim were effectively a social institution, whereby members met on a common basis, typically on the basis of common membership in a religious cult or a crafts guild. They would socialize within these groups and dine at community events known as sashisha. There is limited evidence for the existence of electoral districts in Carthage. The strongest evidence comes from a Latin inscription located in Libya, dated to around 48 AD. The inscription indicates that a person was conferred a political position in the city at the behest of the town senate and the people, with votes and assent from all portae. Typically, the word portae in Latin would translate as gates. However, given the context, it is possible that it may have referred to some form of political unit or district. We likely won't be certain until more evidence comes about. The word Suffete is a Latin translation of the Punic phrase meaning judge. The political position of Suffete represented the monarchical component in the Carthaginian Republic. The Suffetes were the primary decision-makers of Carthage. They were charged with powers often associated with chief executives and modern political systems. Every year, the lower courts would hold elections. It was during these political proceedings that they would elect two Suffetes, charged with overseeing the affairs of the Carthaginian state. Records suggest that it was often the case that one Suffete would preside over domestic civilian affairs, while the other would handle foreign affairs. More often than not, a Suffete charged with overseeing foreign affairs would be placed in charge of the war efforts, in Africa and in Europe. Though the specifics are left out of the texts, it is strongly implied that there were genealogical and wealth limitations on persons seeking candidacy to the Suffete. A person of lowly birth or of insufficient funds would have been barred from running for the office. Overall, the Suffetes appear to have been almost a direct corollary to the Roman consulship. They were the chairman of the Senate, which served as a board of advisors. They also commanded the armies on both domestic and foreign fronts. They were often equivocated with kings, and only the laws of the Senate and the Citizens' Assembly limited their powers. The Suffetes would regularly collaborate with leading men of the city, who were recognized as being greater than the common citizen by virtue of their wealth and heritage. In Carthage, this body of great men was called the Adirim, which roughly translates as the Mighty Ones. This was effectively the Carthaginian equivalent of the Roman Senate, and represented the aristocratic elements of the Carthaginian Republic. The Carthaginian Adirim met at a building close to the Great Market Square, likely the Temple of Eshmun on the Barsa Hill. It was within the confines of this temple that the Adirim would make legislative decisions on behalf of the Republic. Legislative proceedings transpired as follows. First, the Suffete convened the Adirim on affairs of the state. Second, the Adirim would engage in a debate on a given issue. If there was unanimous consensus, the bill would be passed. However, if there was any vote against the bill, then it would be put before the Citizens' Assembly. The Adirim had jurisdiction over matters of war and peace. It was this legislative body that handled both foreign and domestic affairs. They had the power to declare war, reject terms, and approve treaties. The Adirim would also reprimand generals who failed in the line of duty. They were responsible for approving and raising funds for the armies, and it is likely that they had control over matters of public finance as well. The last major component of the Carthaginian Republic is the Citizens' Assembly. This political body was called Hum in the Punic language, which roughly translates as the body of people. The Citizens' Assembly represented the democratic component of the Carthaginian Republic. It served as both a check on the Adirim and the Suffete. The Citizen Assembly's primary function was to vote on decisions passed by the Senate, resolve deadlocks between the Senate and the Suffete, and to vote on elections to political office, including to the Suffete and other lesser administrative positions within the Republic. In some matters deemed critical to the state, or during extended periods of military activities, the Suffetes allowed the Citizens' Assembly to participate in Adirim discussions. During these moments, members of the Citizens' Assembly were allowed to freely discuss and voice their opinions to members of the Senate, as if they were peers. The ability to freely interact with members of the Senate during legislative proceedings appears to have been a unique feature to the Carthaginian Republic, and is not reported elsewhere in ancient history. And there you have it. The Carthaginian Republic was held together by a system of checks and balances, comprising the Suffete, the Senate, and the people.